What would a crystalline structure of the entire Earth look like? It would be a giant databases, better than the data centers. It would be better than the data centers. It wouldn't lead to something worse. But what if in current days we can make things that propagate out to the future and affect it for our safety? The Earth in the future is going to be engulfed by the sun. This is a case of how horrendous a hazardous waste can be if its cleavage sites are sown for the most destruction possible. Such circumstances would resemble what happens in spaghettification of a black hole. These are what Schwarzschild radiuses have a potential to be anywhere as. The radius of a black hole damage actually is an occurrence from a difference of sizes that are calculated through Schwarzschild radiuses. Sowing a cleavage site and creating a synthetic hazardous waste is a science in itself, but it can also be an art, such as practices of medicine are. And the outline and designs are so spectacular, it can be understood as the difference from fool's gold or a lab-made diamond, a fake one. If you're able to pick up the dirt and pan it, and you could tell the difference if it was fool's gold or a fake diamond, this would be a utilization of crystalline structure. Crystalline structures have an entire booklet called crystallography, which is closely as you can get to a material sense of a binary code. A binary structure is a language that robots, which are computers with automation, enact. We can be just as smart as that, but we need material senses because our eyes are how we understand information 90% of the time. Visual learners. So I have two ideas of how to articulate what sowing a cleavage site could be other than panning a bomb with a wick coming out of it, the old school like metal bulb with a rope wick coming, if that was burning, and then having DNA-like structure. The more that illuminating the sparks, the clearer it was to see that they were actually DNA structure. Having computer asterisks on a keyboard coming out of a fire hydrant. Because the more that you spray the fire hydrant and the closer that the bomb comes to getting the wick lit, the asterisks in DNA can be more and more animated to resemble what either of those objects do. And the fact that they cancel each other out or strive to is a battle that isn't good or bad, depending on who's using it. You know, it's not the person, it's not the gun that's evil, it's the person. But those things are small. You need larger scale things to make a difference. If pagans were running the entire earth and they were embattled with zombies, these are two icons that would mirror catastrophic cosmic scales, that you would need bigger fire hydrants and larger bombs to have an effect. And I chose pagans because they have the elements that are different, so you could make those globally the worst possible scenarios in order to activate Schwarzschild radius attributes on the biggest landscapes, continents, and that would be like a giant simulation, which the Schwarzschild radius, if it was incorporated as a crystalline structure over the entire Earth, because the Earth has been measured and weighed, and the schematics for the accurate actuary, how accurate could one get? It says how organic is organic. The difference of fool's gold and actual gold, or a diamond versus a fake one. Just to find out like how stable is a structure, what holds up a building its beams, but what if its beams were all just one monolith? Would you rather have that? If a monolith could be like an igloo's keystone to the entire building, what risk and what reward could you get out of that versus all these regular beams that aren't as acclimated to its region, meaning the landfill that it's on top of, versus a monolith if it was more environmentally precise? That would be more of a risk because you would just have one stable structure, but what if it was as stable as all the beams holding up the structure? It would be granted a reward that isn't being utilized by all the beams. It's kind of like how there was like Pangea at the start with all the continents together, and then at the end of times the sun is going to engulf Earth. If between those two there was an Atlantis that was built on Earth, it would be as though your body it's always regulating to equalize like your bones and your muscles in order to find a homeostasis. The Earth is doing the same thing. So if everyone had the ultimate going green ability, that would be like the best era of from Pangea into the future. So the fact that that could be an Atlantis, I think, is a scenario that everyone could strive for. But right now we don't know the difference between cleavage sites of hazardous waste particles and N95. The crystalline structure of the entire Earth look like? It would have to have a diagonal, and so the solstice is vertical rays from any point on Earth where you're at. The shot heard around the world, if there's a firearm, it's kind of like a bomb, except it's more accurate because it has a projectile and a certain trajectory. Things like this are better to be utilized if everyone can understand the schematics. An asterisk on a keyboard is a resemblance of like a popsicle stick bomb. The things that kids used to make at school, it would have just like triangle and then one popsicle stick going through the triangle so that they would all be weighing on each other on opposite ends. Like what goes up must come down. And when it comes to things like neural transplants, in order to make the blind see and the deaf hear, it sounds great on paper, but at what length would that be deriving if at any point in time, such as a post-traumatic stress disorder, being dependent on a device? Such as like, I'm not feeling better hurting myself, I'm hurting myself to feel better. When like someone gets injured and then they're like, help me, my leg got blown off. And then someone punches them in the face and they're like, why'd you do that for? And then they say, well, now your leg doesn't hurt as bad, your face does. He's like, well, yeah, I guess you're right. Terminator is a movie where robots in the future come here.
Robots in the future come here